We're very glad to have you joining us for this global webinar series. It's part of a project which is supported by the Prague Civil Society Center focused on building solidarity and alliances with the people of Ukraine today, which is led by the Ukraine Leadership Academy, an extraordinary organization working to support and train youth in youth leadership across Ukraine, as well as our partners, Collegium Civitas from Poland, Un Ponto Per from Italy, and the Romanian Peace Institute, Patria from Romania. We're joined today by four extraordinary individuals who have been involved extensively both before and now during the war and the Russian invasion. We have Alina Kurska, who is the International Affairs Director at the Global Empowerment Mission, GEM, as well as Ukrainian Youth Delegate to the United Nations. Denis Danza, who is on the Youth Affairs Council under the President of Ukraine, as well as the Youth Council of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Olha Melnik from the Ukraine Leadership Academy, and Rostislav Kubik from the Ukraine Leadership Academy, and a BBC local producer. We've invited all of our contributors to share their experiences on how is the war and how is the invasion of Ukraine affecting youth, the experiences of youth, but also what are youth doing in this period? What is the engagement, the response? How are youth engaging? And what they would like to share with us as audience and colleagues joining from around the world for how we can support. We've asked each of the speakers to contribute for about 5 to 10 minutes. It's up to them to be able to bring forward their experiences and what they would like to share. And then we will open up for conversations, interaction, and discussion after. I would also like to share with you that there's a very large-scale ongoing research project which will be engaging with thousands of youth across Ukraine to hear from them about their experiences, as well as what they want for the future of Ukraine, their voice and their vision and their involvement for a future of stability, peace, and security for Ukraine. This will lead to a major conference in Ukraine, as well as an international conference in September or October of this year. We will share information on this well ahead of time for all who wish to join. But at the moment, it is my pleasure to welcome and to hand the floor or the web camera and microphone to Alina Kurska. Alina, дякую.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be here and to be speaking at this great event, which underlines a very important topic, namely how the youth of the world can contribute to the peace in Ukraine. So Kai said that I'm a part of the team of the Global Empowerment Mission, which is a disaster relief organization. This is an American disaster relief organization, but we are operating all around the world. And on the second day, when the war started, we were on the Polish-Ukrainian border with supporting Ukrainians fleeing the war. And my journey with GM started, namely March 2022, because the months that I was speaking at this event, like a year ago, I was part of the team of the former First Lady of Poland when we started a joint project with Global Empowerment Mission, which was relocation project. So this project was aimed at relocating Ukrainians fleeing the war to the safe places. And we ended up relocating almost 40,000 people to more than 48 countries. And this was not just sending the people to nowhere. We actually cooperated with national governments. We sent them to the safe places, to the host families who shared their safe homes with Ukrainians. And right now I'm fully working with TEM. So after we understood that the war will last longer than everyone expected, we immediately established operations within Ukraine. So right now we have major operations in Kiev, and we are supporting more than 500 towns and cities across the frontline regions. So right now we are covering 500 towns, villages, and cities in Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kharkiv, and Kherson regions. And per month, we're supporting up to 100,000 families with family kits, that is basic food, basic needs like hygiene products, and so on. And in addition to that, we are also doing a lot of rebuilding projects across Ukraine. So to date, we have rebuilt around 200 private homes. We have rebuilt 7 schools, like apartment buildings, and so on, so that the Ukrainians who don't want to leave and who don't want to, and who want to be back to their homes, they have a chance to do that. So today we hear, a lot of people, politicians speaking about different platforms that they support rebuilding of Ukraine, but they are considering doing the reconstruction when the war actually ends. So I'm very proud that I'm a part of the organization that is already doing a lot of rebuilding projects within Ukraine. And so these projects really, they helped hundreds of people to be back to their homes, hundreds of students to be back to schools. And, despite the war, the life in Ukraine continues and people need to be back to normalcy. Like schools need to operate, hospitals need to operate. So here, I think I will pass the floor to the next speakers. And also a part of my journey was that this year I was also Ukrainian Youth Delegate to the United Nations. And together with Dennis, who is another speaker, we had a chance to represent Ukrainian youth at the United Nations General Assembly this October, which was a great honor for us because we could speak about the messages important for Ukraine and important for Ukrainian youth. So yeah, briefly, that's about my journey this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alina, and thank you for sharing that with us. Dennis, I know that you will be traveling in just a moment, so we're very glad to have you with us to be able to spend as much time as you are able to share your experience. You've been right at the front line on so many levels, from global advocacy to engagement here in Ukraine. I'm privileged and very pleased to welcome Dennis Ganza.
Thank you very much, Kai, and sorry for being on the run. I do have time for this introductory speech. Fortunately, I need to go to Kharkiv just in several hours, so need to pack up the things. I'm really honored to be here because last year, Kai invited me and Alina and several speakers from Ukraine. Of course, we were speaking from the very different perspective. We were speaking in the time when the war has just started, the full-scale war has just started, and of course it has changed a lot during this year. And of course now you know more about Ukraine. You've heard lots of the stories. You've given so much support to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian youth. I know that lots of people all around the world have hosted refugee families from Ukraine. So let me take you to the very small journey prior to the war, because if you had visited Ukraine 1.5 years ago, which is of course was not the very common tourist destination, you would have seen a country which was full of energy, which was full of vibrant democratic development. And I would even say this, with the best coffee places in the whole Europe, with the very great potential, with the very big creativity around the IT sector, civic society, with any sector, you would say. And in one day, on the 24th of February, when Russia invaded Ukraine, and of course, you've heard all those stories about what they have done to our cities, what they have done to our citizens, and to UN estimations, it's more than 8,000 civilian people who are dead. But of course, I think this number is highly underscored because we have not yet occupied cities as Mariupol, where most probably more than 100,000 people can be found dead. And all this potential of all these creative people who were IT guys, tattoo designers, whatever, it turned against Russia because we needed to protect ourselves. We needed to find out the way, first of all, how not let the Russian barbaric army to invade the whole of our country and to kill nearly all of us. And of course, youth in this manner played a very big role. Of course, first of all, lots of the youth, they have joined the army themselves. And right now I have tens and hundreds of friends who are right now in Bakhmut, in Avdiivka, in Kherson, holding a gun in their hands. And this is the best way to achieve peace these days, because Russia does only understand this way, and they're not willing to take their enemies back from Ukrainian territory. And also, lots of the people have become volunteers. They have joined so-called IT army. They have joined, they have created their own projects to understand what we can do. Me, myself, I'm mostly working from the civic society perspective, but I'm in the close touch with the government, where we try to understand what is the real status quo of youth in Ukraine. And in 2021, Ukraine has adopted its own National Youth Strategy 2030, which was standing on the 4 pillars. And, even despite the war, when we gained the group of the international experts, we have seen that the strategy is still relevant because the first pillar of this strategy is security. And security is right now of the biggest importance for our country because we are the most mined country in the world. We are the country where the front line lasts more than 2,000 kilometers, and the country where nearly every day there is an airstrike alert, and the country which has survived the winter sitting with mostly no electricity or no heating most of the time. And youth, on that matter, have played, all these, youth councils, youth organizations. And one day they have become the volunteer centers who are gaining the support from all around the world and spreading it. At the same time, we can see how much work have done young journalists who now work as local producers for international media. And me, myself, and lots of my friends, we have been to the hottest places of the Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war. I have been to Lysychansk. My friend has been to Bakhmut. And one of my friends is standing for more than 20 days in the Donetsk region and covering stories from the front lines. At the same time, you could see the youth, which has themselves started opening businesses because someone needs to run an economy. Someone needs to pay the taxes because war is not a cheap thing. And as Russian frozen assets are not yet given to Ukraine, of course, we rely a lot on the support from the international partners. But at the same time, we have the functioning economy, which is not in the best condition, of course, but still people are paying taxes because it's really vital to give all the payments to the people to cover all the expenses which war is causing. And what I really want to stress in, it's the role of youth in the future, and I want to stress in future democratic rebuilding of our country, because right now we are looking for the ways to make sure that the youth policy and infrastructure has one of the biggest powers in itself, because youth is very mobile, and the sector of the youth policy infrastructure is the one which can be rebuilt very fast. It doesn't require as many resources, for instance, as to rebuild one city. And when you will support young SMEs, when we will find together the ways to support young veterans who have missed education, who are wounded, who become people with disabilities. Also, at the same time, we are looking for the ways to create more community centers, which will be also youth centers, for ensure that there will be enough socialization for people who, of course, have lost connection to their homes, who are in their new communities, who at some point lost their friends because they're just dead because of Russia. And we are now developing this strategy, and I will be really on the behalf of the Youth Affairs Council and the President of Ukraine to invite your organizations and your experience to dedicate to these efforts, because we need you here. We need your resources, and by resources I don't mean always money. We need your mind resources to understand how together we can ensure that youth has enough instruments to participate in rebuilding. For instance, in Ukraine, we don't have the best youth political party system, which will be also needed a lot. And at the same time, we need to find the ways to develop youth civil society organizations. I will just, on this point, I will give you one example, because we, in our activities, we have supported one of the NGOs, which is based in the Rohan territorial Gramada, which is in the Kharkiv region, which was under occupation for the several months. And the problem this organization is facing right now, because they want to cooperate with international partners, they want to apply for international support, but they don't have any single person in the whole village who knows English, because all of them have become refugees. They can't communicate with you. They can't speak as myself. I am really privileged to be here because I have knowledge of English that I can speak to you, but they can't speak. So how to find the ways to support those people with whom we have some problems with communication? Because There are not enough interpreters from Ukrainian to English in this world to communicate with everyone. So we really need your ideas, and I hope that of course, you're the people who have worked in so many countries, in post-conflict countries, in Africa, in Kosovo, in other, and what you have done there, I know, especially the work that Kai is doing. Unfortunately, I don't know all the audience, but I assume that all of you are doing some very important peace building job. And one thing which I really want to invite you to start thinking about as you're the representative of the international community, you most probably follow the news that we are waiting for the major Ukrainian counteroffensive to liberate all of its territories, including Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and Crimea. And the biggest questions which we start asking ourselves inside the civil society, inside the government, what should we do with the youth who were there under occupation for 9+ years? How we reintegrate them back to the society? Because these are still young Ukrainians who lived under occupation, who lived under total Russian propaganda. Some of them were even mobilized to serve in the terrorist Russian army. So we need to find the peaceful ways to ensure how their integration back to Ukraine will occur. Should we find the ways to bring those people as maximum to go study at European universities to get back to the democratic rules? Because, you know, it's not a secret, there is no democracy in Russia. There is no understanding of what is peace building. And we will be talking in just different languages with them at the first point. And of course, Ukraine is not willing to start any terror there. But at the same time, unfortunately, right now, we don't have a strategy on how to reintegrate those territories. And this can happen in just several months. You know, no one knows what will be the results of Ukraine counteroffensive, but we still have a chance that Ukraine will deliberate its own territories. And the first day we come, what we did. So these are like, I have put those thoughts into you just for you to know on what we are thinking, on what we are moving as the Ukrainian civil society and Ukrainian government, which is working in youth policy strategically. I will be really happy. I'm sorry for not joining the discussion and the interactions, but I will leave my contact that we can talk together what we can do. Because as I have told you, we need your mind resources a lot. You are the people who have been working a lot on these matters. You are the people who have experience. And I hope that, of course, you have some spare time with your millions of projects to work closely on Ukraine. Because when I was at the webinar a year ago, Ukrainians were not ready to talk about any peace building because the hatred was very big. And of course, at some point, it stays the same because after all the losses we suffered, it's really hard to feel something good to the people who are attacking you. But at least we are ready to talk on what can we do to ensure that this war will be the last war on the European continent or maybe in the whole world. Of course, I cannot speak about the whole world because I'm an expert on Ukraine, but I really want this to be the last conflict in my country, and especially the last big war between Ukraine and Russia, which of course there have been a lot of them in the history. So I'm happy to join in this, and thank you, Kai, for inviting me. I hope to see you all soon in other events which will be organized by Patrir. And thanks for the work you're doing. Thanks for dedicating your time. And I hope that we will have a chance to speak more concrete on the initiatives we have here. So I invite you, Kada, to cooperate and see you soon. And of course, I always say this, Slava Ukraini.
Dennis, thank you so much for your incredibly rich presentation. You brought up so many issues, so many important issues, as you always do, and such an important and powerful vision for the future as well, to make this the last war in Europe and for all of us to work for the abolition of war. No one should experience what the people of Ukraine, the people of Yemen, the people of Mali and other countries are experiencing in this moment. Now, I know you have to go soon, Dennis, but if we could, if you have just a few more moments with us, I'd like to take the opportunity, because you spoke to a number of critical issues. One of them, the impact of the war on people, As you said, there are youth that are on the front lines that have spent months or even most of the last year in combat under heavy bombardment. There are millions of Ukrainian youth who have been displaced and forced out of their homes, youth who have lost friends, as well as family members, loved ones. And one of the areas we know that will have incredible impact, not only now, but also beyond the war, is the trauma and the lived experience of going through a war, an occupation, an invasion. And I would like to ask if you could speak a moment to that. The other aspect is I really want to raise for all of us the point that you just spoke to in terms of there's such extraordinary work being done by youth across the country, and in fact by the population. As you know, and I've shared before, I've spent more than 25 years engaged in countries that have been affected by war all across the world. I have never seen anything like what has happened in Ukraine, where people of every background across the country have become involved. And very much of that has really been engagement by youth. And you've seen this amazing volunteers, civic response, medical response, people at every level. But then you have this foreign aid system. You have these international donors that come in with their requirements of sometimes 50 to 80 page applications. You have sometimes materials written in English. And we have noticed and been raising consistently with the United Nations, the European Commission, and international NGOs that there does not seem to be a grasping or an understanding at this moment in Ukraine and of how to put into practice real solidarity and support for Ukrainian ownership and Ukrainian-led response. And I would like to ask for your thoughts and your view on that. So one, any further comments you'd like to share about the impact of the war on youth and what we need to think about to support recovery, to support healing and deep engagement and work on trauma? And two, how can international, from governments to agencies to the UN and donors, show better allyship and support the incredible response and engagement by Ukrainian society and by Ukrainian youth?
Yeah, thank you, Kai, for asking me these things, and I'm excused to the speakers who are after me for taking your time. So because I need to run. As for the impact, it's very different. It depends on like we are in Ukraine. We are really different people right now because I have friends who have been standing in Kharkiv for the whole year. And they have been suffering, like, for instance, sound terrorism every day, because when you hear this boom, 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 I have a friend who lost an eyesight because of this. We have people who have suffered the big, they have lost someone. I don't know if there is any solution on how we will be healing the whole nation, because even the person who have not been to Ukraine a single day, but is a Ukrainian and working somewhere abroad, he's still suffering from the trauma because of the news you are reading every day. Your mind just explodes. And I know that there is the big initiative from our First Lady, Olena Zelenska, to start a big initiative on the nation healing. And of course, we need to prepare thousands and thousands of psychologists and civic leaders who will be tackling the PTSD and other traumas. I don't have an answer to this question because I don't know how I'm coping, and I don't have the solution for me coping to this war. So how can I speak on behalf of thousands of people? Speaking about the international partners, of course, one big problem which I see, and it's not, of course, your fault, but we live in different we live in different time speed, because we Ukrainians, we work every day, we don't have vacations, we don't have holidays, and time for us is like we need to solve everything today, right now, or sometimes it must be solved yesterday. And when partners come and they try to work with us as it had been prior to the war, that filling thousands of reports, filling thousands of this. I do understand that this is a bureaucracy you need to pass through. But the more you lower up the bureaucracy is the better, because it's about the pace which is needed for Ukraine. Because, for instance, one very short example, I will give you this as an example and you will think about it. We have given together with the American partner a small grant to one organization in Western Ukraine, and because we had some delays, it always happens in the project. The leaders of the organization, they were mobilized 1 month prior to the contract ending. And right now we are passing through a situation where we don't have anyone to finish the project. And they were just mobilized. And sometimes, like, the help you are providing, of course, it's a very vital thing, but you must really space up. If you're working with Ukraine, I know you have private lives, but if you really plan on working with Ukraine well, forget about weekends, forget about holidays, just work with us. This is the best thing you can do. Dedicate your time after work to call someone of your Ukrainian friends just to ask how are they. It's very important right now because we are in such position and we are amazingly tired of what is happening. We are running our last resources, and you have your normal peaceful life, and you have a chance to give some extra resources of your own. Like, I'm not speaking about the money, I'm speaking about just extra support from yourself. Call your friends from Ukraine, ask how is she or how is he, ask what he needs, and really think wisely about if we can pace up the support, because I'm talking, it's just the matter of surviving. And I will not take any more time, and I will really need to run. And thank you very much one more time.
Thank you, Dennis. Be safe in all you are doing. Thank you for all you're doing and for sharing with us today. We're going to have 2 more exceptional speakers, and then we'll be opening up for conversation, questions, and engagement from all. I'm very glad to be able to welcome now Olha Melnik from the Ukraine Leadership Academy.
So, hi everyone, I hope you're having a good evening. My name is Helga, or you can call me Olha, or whatever you like, if you have some questions. So I want to tell you my story. I think it will be better for you to understand and for me to explain, and I'll start. So the day before war, it was just the most ordinary day that I was having, just like the previous 11 years while I've been studying at school. And I was just preparing my homework, getting ready for the next day and going to the tutors. Also chatting with my friends and just having fun. Obviously, I was anxious because I knew that there was something that had to happen, but I didn't know what was going to happen. And like a week before war, I also attended the event that was about how to get ready to the war, and it was even called "What if the war starts tomorrow?" But it didn't start tomorrow, but some days after. And so, like, the main message is that everyone was living their ordinary life, but one day when we woke up, alarms, bombing, and all these sounds that make human mind go crazy. And for me, it was like mind blowing because I knew that like war conflict will begin, but when I actually realized that it's already began, I didn't know just what to do, what to think, and how will I live after that, and actually will I survive? And when the time passed, I just realized how much more grateful I became, because knowing that you have a bigger threat than the rest of countries of Europe, I mean, like Germany, I don't know, Poland, and just other countries that are more safe than us. They don't have to fight, like have to face the opponent, but they help us, so they suffer less. And you understand that there are a lot of people that are just having a usual life, like you did before war started. It's really making you go crazy. But I want to say that even though the war is one of the worst things that can happen to you, it really teaches you a lot. And Ukrainian youth also learns from war a lot of things, and about that I will talk like a bit later. Also, for my story, I want to share with you that just imagine that you had a casual evening as always, but the next morning, the first thought of yours was, will the World War III start right now? And actually, it might sound scary, but when you really go and think, ask your parents, friends, and communicate just with other people, what do they think? We all realize that we have the same thought, and it actually scares because we don't know if this war will start, or we are just anxious about something that even won't happen. And we do not know if this World War III will happen or won't, but we have to get ready for that. And what I mean is that we have to be prepared for everything. And this feeling of, oh my gosh, I have to be prepared is really exhausting because all of us are exhausted, as Dennis said, and we are just tired of it, but we cannot stop preparing and volunteering and donating because this is our country. We have to defend it. And this is like the main point of Ukrainians, that even though we are super tired, we will never give up on our country, of our nation, because this is what makes us Ukrainians. And this is it. And this makes us human at first. And we know that we have this one purpose that all people of Ukraine share. Also, speaking about what actually youth changed, I don't know how to say, or changed in their mentality, is that first of all, we have now just the fear of losing someone or something, because we never know where the next bomb will come, and we have like this sort of anxiety and not being sure of what will happen next. Also, this taught us that nothing will be like going your way. It will take place, just take as it is, and we cannot control everything. So I think young people, and actually not only young people, but all people of Ukraine, learned that we cannot control everything. And human nature is that people want to control as much as possible, but war taught us that it is not possible, and we have to adapt to the situation we are having right now. Also, there's one big problem that I noticed as just communicating with other teenagers and the youth of Ukraine, that there are things that are not connected to the war. Actually, they're whole opposite to it, but we cannot like put our life on a pause and just forget about it. I am speaking about like theater, the meetings, dating, hobbies, and all that stuff. Even school, school is like an ordinary thing to the modern world, but war make it stop only on 2 weeks, but still. And I'm speaking about that such things that make us happy. We do not recognize it as things that can take place when there's a war going. For example, even when I'm studying in the academy and I'm just doing my best, volunteering also, and going on such webinars so I can tell the European youth what is war like and how it affects us, I'm still feeling kind of guilty because I'm not like with the weapon defending my land physically, but I do defend it in the way I can do. And the youth also as me and me as the rest of the youth are doing their best, even though we know that maybe it is not enough, like it's not that big deal as we would like it to be, but still we fight on our own, and this is like the most important thing. Even though we are not gods, we only human, and we do what we can. So there's like few more things that I want to share about what changed in Ukrainian youth. And also we became more stress resistant, obviously, because we also have this alarms and bombing and this news. So we just realized that we cannot control everything and start to be more patient and help each other instead of giving this anxiety to one another. So even though we became traumatized, we became more experienced, and this is now our power because we know the enemy, we know what we are fighting for, we know what we defend. So it makes us stronger. And also we learned that having fun, obviously, all those hobbies, as I said, dating, reading books, drawing, skating, whatever you like, even though when there's a war going on, we still have to have this like oasis that keeps us motivated and fresh, because if we don't do the stuff that makes us feel energy, we won't be able to defend our country. So the youth changed, like, I don't know how to say it with the words, I just feel it, but I'll try to. All people of Ukraine, especially the young one, because they're the most active, just connect to each other more and became more mature. We became more self-aware, and we just know now what we want our country to be in the future much better than we did a year before. So I think this is like the main points I wanted to say. Yeah, that's it.
Hola, Helga. Thank you so much for everything that you have shared and for sharing with us your very personal experience and helping us to understand, at least in some ways, what it has been like for you and for so many young people across Ukraine to live with this experience of going from living your lives fully, just as all of us do all around the world, and then the next day having your country invaded, and what it has been like through your experience this past more than a year of the ongoing Russian invasion and occupation and war in Ukraine. Thank you for sharing, and I look forward to hearing more when we open up together with everyone to have further questions and discussion. Now, I'm very glad to be able to welcome Rostislav Kubik, who is also with the Ukraine Leadership Academy, as well as a BBC local producer. Rostislav, please.
Thank you, Kai. There's been a lot of said by my colleagues regarding the experience of the youth that they had in the past year, and I'll try to be short and take you through this short but a long in terms of memories journey that happened to me throughout the past year. So as Olha said, everything changed on the February 24th, and luckily I grew up and surrounded myself in an environment that was socially active, entrepreneurship, and it was people who would always do something. So it wasn't a big question for us what to do. We just started doing everything that we could, and then started off to separate on actually what was needed and what was needed to be created and supported. And you can imagine the first week and a half of the war, everything you do, you either unload or load humanitarian aid to regions that are getting occupied. There's heavy fighting or shelling, and it's usually Mykolaiv, Kharkiv, some part of Zaporizhia region. Or you're going to the railway station to volunteer or to help set up tents, because the capacity of the Lviv railway station, which is my home city, which is Kai is currently right now situated, is 5,000 to 6,000 people a day. And you can imagine the scale and the amount of people would be 40 to 60,000 people a year. And you could see rooms with moms with little babies just escaping the war for the first week and a half, to even up to 3 weeks of war. So a lot of my friends in my environment were doing that. Of course, a big portion of my environment went fighting already and went for training and are still fighting. So this is how the first month and a half of the war passed by, was just put your head down and just start doing until you eventually come up to some process and some stable realization of the project that needs to be done. Luckily, in the environment that I'm in, which is the Ukrainian Leadership Academy, another environment is an NGO that me and my brothers created together. We were resourceful enough to basically create a stable flow of humanitarian aid to support a lot of people and IDPs. And also regarding the Ukrainian Leadership Academy, we were able to invite international representatives from all over the world and show them the situation. And then by around this time, I was part of a BBC producing team, and Bucha was deoccupied, as all of you might know, and it was a really big story. And there's probably not many people left in this world who don't know or haven't heard about what happened in Bucha. So I was actually our team was one of the first ones to come in there. And the third day after the deoccupation of Bucha, me and a few other people, including cameramen, soundmen, and a few other producers, were the ones who could actually see the atrocities of Russian war and how it all happened on the ground itself. I've approximately spent around months and a half around Bucha, talking to locals. We were also doing a documentary that we worked on. Its main focus was made to interview people who were connected to the ones who were executed in the Bucha during the Russian occupation. So you can briefly or kind of imagine what we had to live through. And what amazed me during that time is that the shift of the thought of people, that when we just came into the deoccupied region, for the first time ever for myself, people, when talking to them, were getting ready for the next occupation. So they well thought out for themselves how and what do they need and what exactly they should set up and who to call, and all of these questions needed to be answered for them. And then by the time that we were leaving from there, and then I visited few of the people that I met there again and again throughout the year, their rhetoric and way of thought changed into a different way of thinking, and it was about how to protect themselves and what they need to do, and how to take care of themselves when it's a Ukrainian territory. So this was one of the experiences that I lived through. And then after that, either with the BBC team or with a team that collects international crimes and then applies them, I visited basically every deoccupied territory in Ukraine throughout the year. So I went to Kharkiv region, Izum. Kharkiv currently is the most mined region in the Ukraine. You can imagine a city of 1.1 million people, no offline school, all school is online, no socialization for children, for youth. If you speak to someone on the streets of Kharkiv, aged 14 to 18, and you ask them, where are your friends? The main answer is either they left or we just connect each other by calling, or by texting. They rarely meet outside, and there's rarely any initiative happening inside of the city of 1.1 million people for the youth, basically connecting, grouping them together, was of course constant shelling. Then part of the experiences that I've lived through was visiting the eastern part of Ukraine. This wasn't my first time going there. I've been there in around 2016 and 17, and compared to that, it was a whole different picture. Remembering the times of when the war actually started in 2014, it was really quiet compared to the time that we were for around a month of the time in the eastern part of Ukraine. So by the time that we have spent 4 days in Bakhmut, I would look at my watch, and the longest time that I could hear silence was minute and 22 seconds. The rest of the time, you could hear either shots, explosions, screamings, flyings, any type of military sound you can imagine is basically is present there. And it recalls to the words that Dennis was saying, our previous speaker, about the PTSD and about the coping mechanisms for the youth, because most of the people that I met there are around my age, or probably 10 to 15 years older. And you can imagine living in this situation for 6 to 7 months. You, of course, the human mind can get used to it, but when you go to somewhere quiet, you're not like that anymore. Other than that, I've been to Kryvyi Rih, close to the frontal lines, and then also I've been to Kherson. By the time I visited Kherson, right after President Zelensky left it, it was a fairly peaceful, in parentheses, right, calm city, because it was just deoccupied. And compared to the situation that is happening now, I've been to Kherson probably around a month and a half ago. It's getting shelled daily from the opposite side of the bank. And looking at the Russians, there's no point of shelling the city that you're occupying. And as soon as part of the city was deoccupied, they started shelling the city itself. We've also created several workshops and invited few experts. Some of them were from Israel, some of them were from the United States, regarding the PTSD. And our main goal was to create this set of tools for kindergarten teachers, who would then work with kids, for them that it would be easier for kids to live through alarms and go through experiences that they're having throughout this war. All of you have heard about multiple rocket launches on the territory of Ukraine, focused on the energy sector of Ukraine. To be exact, it happened 21 times. The average amount of rockets launched was around 55 to 60. The biggest amount was 96 rockets. And I clearly remember a story when my hometown was targeted, and it was on 31st of October. And it was a simple evening. There was an alarm. We would hide in the basement with the family, heard few explosions, and then all the lights were cut out. And as soon as I walked out on the streets and the alarm was over, there was no power in the city whatsoever. You couldn't see any light. And it was dark as night, even though it was around 8 o'clock in the morning, October. And I remember to myself that I thought that I need to go to somewhere standing up high so I can see the city without light, because I don't know when I'll get another opportunity to see anything like this. And so there's a hill near my house, and I walked up to that hill. It took me probably 15 minutes, and then I turned around, and there are complexes and building apartments around the hill, and I started looking at the windows, and inside the windows I could see Ukrainian simple families just doing their ordinary things. Mom was cooking dinner for kids, someone was reading a book, some kids were playing, elderly people were walking around the house just doing tea for themselves. And that was a great lesson of resilience of Ukrainian nation. It was a great example of resilience of the Ukrainian nation. You could clearly see that no matter what happens, we still have ourselves, our families, our country, and we can stay together and we can go through all of these multiple rocket launches and losses. And it went on throughout the whole winter. And Ukrainians, due to their flexibility and will to live in the free state, they adapted. There used to be this, we used to call it with friends, festival of generators. As soon as there's a power blackout, people would just take out their generators outside, start them, and continue living from then on. Also, one of the thoughts that I had throughout this year is regarding the environment that I grew up in and people who I know well. I've been to funeral 4 times this year already, and I've only been to 1 wedding. And in my age, in youth age, it's supposed to be different. You're supposed to be going to weddings and celebrating marriages of your friends and not putting them into the ground because of war. So you can imagine what kind of effect it has on average representative of Ukrainian youth, and most of them either lost someone or know someone who had lost someone. So you can imagine the scale of the whole situation that is happening right now. Regarding the current state and the youth, well, if you look at the eastern part and more central part of Ukraine, it's been slowly developing and coming back from survival mode to this living mode. And there's some initiatives created by the youth. Of course, all of them have support and need more support than they receive right now, because youth is the moving force of basically good change in the country. And I believe that we now have a generation of youth that will be affected by this war. And I can definitely say that my grandchildren will be bored from my stories regarding what happened during this time, and we will have 2 more generations at least affected by this war. So our main goal and main task right now is how to make this the most the shortest basically war, and how to get out of this war with the least damage for the society, for the infrastructure, and for Ukraine itself also. Thank you.
Thank you, Rostislav. Thank you for everything that you have shared. At least 2 more generations at least affected by this war, together with the millions who are living through it now. You've been to 4 funerals and only 1 wedding in this period. The impact that it is having on so many. Thank you also for speaking of the Bucha massacre. It is important for us to name it and to remember it, and the other massacres, including the daily bombardment, the shelling, the occupation that is happening, and what both you and Olha spoke to, the incredible resilience of people also in this period, the solidarity, the people continuing to live their lives, but also having said and spoken so clearly the need for more support than is being received at the moment, and the need for support that will continue for many years. From each of our incredible 4 contributors, we have heard their own experiences, as well as experiences affecting so many millions of youth across Ukraine, as well as millions of youth who have been displaced from Ukraine, the impact of the war. And you mentioned also now in terms of the need to work with schools and teachers. And I would just like to share with everyone the incredible work of one of many extraordinary Ukrainian organizations, the Institute for Peace and Common Ground, which has been engaging from the beginning of the war, developing materials for teachers and schools for providing trauma-informed education. We heard earlier from Dennis the need of thousands of psychiatrists and psychologists after the war, but we know from having worked in war-affected countries and contexts around the world, psychiatrists and psychologists trained in trauma psychology are incredibly important, but we also need to find instruments and ways of reaching people much more broadly, youth affected by the war, combatants, children, and the entire society. And that includes both learning self-help techniques, but also engaging with the education system, the one system that reaches so many children and youth, to help introduce effective trauma-informed education and peace education, as the Institute for Peace and Common Ground in Ukraine is doing. I would like to now open up and to invite everyone to think of either reflections and questions you would like to share. Perhaps there's something that you would like to say to all of our four speakers or one of our four speakers also in the chat, and we'll open up as well for voicing and sharing questions and contributions. As we give a moment for you to think of that, we'd also like to share with you some information around what is being done to support youth in Ukraine and youth peace building more broadly. First, we'd like to thank again the Prague Civil Society Center, which has made this event possible, and the work to support solidarity between Ukraine, Europe, and internationally, as well as the Ukraine Leadership Academy, Collegium Civitas, Unpontoper, and the Romanian Peace Institute for working together to organize this event. We'd like to share for everyone that next month in Kyiv, there will be the first Kyiv Peace Building and Social Recovery Conference. This will be a milestone event open to all organizations and those working in social recovery, working with trauma, social cohesion, and peace building in Ukraine, and bringing together Ukrainian organizations, international organizations, the government of Ukraine, the United Nations, the European Commission, and others. The focus of the first Kyiv conference will be on early recovery in areas that have been liberated from Russian occupation, focusing on physical recovery, but also social recovery, social cohesion, dealing with trauma, and peace building. We also want to mention again, for those who may have joined during the event, the ongoing long-term project on the voices and experiences of Ukrainian youth in war, recovery, and peace building. This will include a major publication in the autumn of this year, bringing forward the voices and experiences of youth, as well as what they have identified, the issues, needs, priorities of youth, and that youth bring forward for working for stabilization, recovery, peace building, and shaping the future of Ukraine beyond the war, and focusing on the incredible initiatives, programming, and efforts of youth in the country. And this will also include a major conference in Ukraine in the autumn of 2023, bringing together all agencies and organizations working in Ukraine to support youth, and especially led by the incredible youth organizations active in Ukraine. This will also be followed by an online global conference to enable political leaders, experts, UN agencies, international organizations around the world to be able to engage and to take part as well. I should also mention that beginning now in May, an extraordinary group of 60 Ukrainian youth will travel from Ukraine to Warsaw, Brussels, Bonn, Köln, Cologne, Strasbourg, Vienna, and Cluj-Napoca in Romania. 60 youth traveling from Ukraine who will be meeting with students, youth, the European Commission, organizations, and holding a range of events across the European Union to help people be able to hear their stories live directly. If you're in any of these cities, if you have organizations, headquarters, or partners in these cities and would like to learn more about this event, we'll be sharing more information on this forward. With that, we'd like to open up now for questions, interaction, and anything that those who are joining us from around the world. We have colleagues joining from Syria, colleagues joining from Italy, from Canada, from across Ukraine, from many other areas. We would like to invite you to now share your reflections or questions you may have to our speakers. If you would like to contribute, you can do so either by writing your question or comment in the chat, or by raising your hand using the reactions button, and we will invite you to share your question or contribution. As we give a moment for everyone to think of questions or comments you'd like to share, I would like to ask each of our speakers, Alina, Orhan, Rosislav, if you could share what it has meant for you to see the solidarity and response and the way youth have stepped up across Ukraine through this period. How important do you feel that has been to Ukraine surviving in the midst of war? And how important do you feel it will be in the post-war recovery period? And if you can speak about the importance of this engagement and the role that youth have had. I don't know if anyone would like to be the first to dive in on that. Rostislav, Alina, Orha, whoever wishes.
I can be the first. Thank you for the
Ladies first.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's the one word, incredible. So the youth, the level of strength of the youth, the level of efforts of Ukrainian youth, it has been incredible since the beginning of war, because, you know, I have never seen, first of all Ukrainians have surprised the world, because all the world have seen how resilient and how strong Ukrainians are. Nobody expected that much resilience from Ukraine. And in terms of youth, you know, before this call, I was on the call with the Youth Council under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, which I become the member, and Denis, who is not with us here on the call, he is also in this council. And we were discussing different initiatives that we will implement during this war, during like this year, in terms of countering Russian disinformation, in terms of mobilizing the youth of the world to support Ukraine and to contribute to the peace in Ukraine. And the number of ideas is so big that we really need to just prioritize those ideas and those projects so that we have the capacity and the people to implement them. So generally speaking, the level of support from the youth is incredible. And I think that in the post-war rebuilding of Ukraine, the youth will be one of the key driving factors for the post-reconstruction and rebuilding of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alina. And then Rostislav, Orha, would you like to contribute as well?
Of course. As for myself, I believe that active minority sets up a project or a vision, and then passive majority creates a tempo with which it moves, the society moves. And in terms, if you divide the Ukrainian society and youth into these two factors, basically during Ukrainian full-scale invasion, we have this passive majority switching into a bigger side of the society. And the effect of that shift in the society, of the civil thought inside of the society, was tremendous in terms of the amount of initiatives, the time even spent volunteering, the trust in between people. Like you can imagine, in the first week and a half or 2 weeks, you could get a phone call number. Somebody would drive up to you, give you one of the most expensive things that you can give to a soldier, which would be like a thermal scope, which would cost around 5,000 to 6,000 euros, not even knowing your name, and he would or she trust you that you would deliver it to a place that they needed to. And this level of trust is still present in the Ukrainian youth and society overall. Ukrainian youth, in terms of rebuilding the Ukrainian future, well, as Alina mentioned, this process is ongoing currently right now, and it's important to start it earlier, because then the youth will have more influence regarding of how we actually can see it, and maybe we can adopt and implement new ideas regarding any type of reconstruction with the consideration of the youth in the reconstruction itself. And in my opinion, Ukrainian youth during the war became more friends with each other. There is barely separation from the east to west, from the north to south of Ukrainian. You're a Ukrainian youth now, and we're proud to be so.
Thank you, Sislav. Olga. Ola.
Yes, thank you. So I want to tell what is important of the situation to the world is that we gave an example how to get resilient in a short period of time. And actually, the Ukrainian youth showed that young people that from some point are not like capable of doing a lot of stuff because we like a lot of teenagers and they are not adults. They have not same experience and just not enough knowledge how to handle different situations. But youth actually showed the most activism, and active people attract active people. So when all these volunteers, entrepreneurs, students of universities provoked that energy boost, actually the whole country woke up, and every company and every organization or just random people on the streets get those like motivation and understood what we are willing to do together. And this provoked also resilience because we became more connected to each other, and this made us stronger. So we know, because we all know what we are fighting for, and most important, who we are fighting for. This make us this gave us strength, and this is important, like to see for the whole world, because it makes people realize that together we are power and nothing can stop us. So I think it's 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 what I would like to say.
A powerful testimony. Nothing will stop us. Thank you for that, Ola. You spoke about the youth activism and the youth involvement, and I'd like to raise for everyone joining us today and also those who will be watching this later in the recording of the webinar, the critical resolution of the United Nations Security Council, UN Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security, which speaks to the need for youth to be actively involved, to be supported, to be resourced, to be given the space to engage actively in all issues affecting peace and security in their countries and globally. We have a number of questions that have been raised both earlier and now in the chat. One is from Tom Rawlings, who was asking earlier about the situation of children in Ukraine, especially those who've been kidnapped and taken to Russia, and wondering how he can help. And perhaps we can broaden that out to the issue of those children who have been abducted and are being held in Russia. We also have a second contribution that was made now by Simonetta Costanzo Pitaluga, where Simonetta expresses her admiration for the youth resilience in this conflict and is moved to ask what projects should be financed, what projects need to be supported, asking about the importance of training and adult education for social transformation. So we'd like to invite, if you wish to speak to those issues. First, the children who are abducted and held in Ukraine, and secondly, the issue of what projects you feel need to be supported.
Well, I can try to answer regarding the abducted children. As you might know or heard, from the occupied territories, Russian troops or newly Russian established government, as they call themselves, from some time, they take Ukrainian children, sometimes even without their mothers, and then transport them into mainland Russia, Russian territory. and it's a huge issue. Unfortunately, I don't operate the correct numbers. I know several NGOs who are responsible into bringing back some of the children and the legality of the process itself. So maybe it would be easier for the person who asked the question, sorry, I don't remember the name, to contact me. I'll send my information and I can contact you. Of what I know and how the process look like is that they collect the information from the mothers who know that their children have been abducted and are inside the Russia. Then they transfer them to Poland. They have a 3-day pitch with them regarding questionnaires on the Russian side. What are they going to be asked? Where they're going to go? What can they say and what can they not say? And then they're sent through Poland to Minsk and then flown to Moscow, Russia. And then as soon as they cross the border with Belarus and Russia and leave the plane, they're met by the internal security service of Russia, questioned, and then maybe or maybe not are given their children back. From the information that I know, the NGOs have been somewhat successful, and there are actually cases of mothers being denied their children and not given back. So you can imagine the despair of a mother going through all this path and then having no reply or nothing basically, and not even being able to see their children because of this war and because of foreign policy regarding abducted children in Russia. Thank you. I'll share my contact info.
Thank you, Rostislav. Alina, Olha, would either of you like to speak to either of those two questions?
I would like to tell about kids kidnapped because I had a little research on this topic. And what I know is that 16,000 kids are officially verified in Russian Federation right now. And this means that they are like, they have Russian passports, if we can call it that way. They have like documents that they are like Russian, but obviously they are Ukrainians. But Russian Federation makes our children like raise them their way, so our children forget who they are. And the sad part is that there is 150,000 kids that are illegally transported to Russia. It means that they have no documents. They're just like somewhere in Russia where nobody knows where they are, and we cannot contact them or their parents. And this makes really difficult to get those kids back to Ukraine. And this is a big problem because we do not know which way will be the most suitable for these kids get adapted back to the Ukrainian society. But this is our problem, and obviously we will have to deal with it. But these are two numbers that are like the most updated, and it's sad that it gets only bigger and bigger. So this is what I know for right now.
Thank you very much, Olha. Alina, do you wish to speak to either of those issues, the issue of the abducted, the kidnapped children and youth, or to what types of projects do you recommend need to be supported in this period?
Yes, I can speak then about the second question, as the two speakers spoke about the children. So, last week I was on a mission trip out east with Jam team, and we were just 2 kilometers from Avdiivka, which is a very hot region right now. And, mostly when we go out east, we see a lot of elderly people who don't want to leave, who are staying in their houses and who are just saying that, where do we go? But also I'm very, every time I'm very astonished when I see a lot of children staying, like very small children, like adults and so on. And in the place we've been, we heard explosions every 20 seconds. So every 20 seconds we heard like either, I don't know, shooting or some kind of explosion. And I just cannot imagine which trauma will these children have. So definitely, I think that the trainings for them are needed already right now, since they have to live with that every day. It's not that, just something that you experience once in a while, but they hear it every single day, and they hear it in their house. And one of the mothers told us that her child just recently asked her, will she be killed? So this is something that the child and the family should never experience. And of course, it's not only about the children, it's about all the people who are going through all of this. So in terms of trauma training, I think that numerous organizations are doing some sort of stuff like this. I'm not aware of those names, but I heard of some trainings. But this is definitely something that I think should be supported at the moment, and when the war ends, for sure.
Thank you very much, Alina. We've had a comment and a question from Karam Hili, which I would like to bring forward for everyone. And I would like to begin by expressing my deepest and profound respect to Karam for what you have shared. Karam is joining us from Syria, a country which has undergone one of the most horrific and devastating wars in the world, and which has not had even remotely the attention and support that has gone to Ukraine, a country where an entire population has lived for well over a decade now, under one of the most brutal wars in the world since the Second World War. And Karam, you expressed both your solidarity from Syria, but you also asked the question of what can be done to keep up the narrative of the Ukrainian resistance and to bring forward the story of what Ukrainians are doing, what youth are doing in the context of misleading media and propaganda and information from Russia, and also this aspect of the strategy of the long war and the fatigue that can bring out, which Russia and other countries have also been involved in other wars around the world. Orha, you also actually named and spoke specifically about being tired. And while speaking about, finding those ways of living and daily living during the war, also this impact of keeping up on the front lines. Dennis spoke about not having weekends, not having nights, and just this total involvement, which has now gone on for more than 1 year. So one, I'd like to ask for your thoughts and any comments you have back to Karam, who has shared this beautiful message of solidarity from Syria, as well as these questions of one, how to bring forward the narrative of what the people of Ukraine are experiencing and to continue to try to foster and strengthen solidarity and support for Ukraine, as well as how to deal with this impact of fatigue of this war continuing now, the largest war in modern European history since the Second World War, continuing now more than 1 year and with no sign of a coming end to the war.
Maybe I can try to answer the first part of the question regarding the narrative. Well, firstly, Karam, thank you for sharing. I'm sorry that you lost your friend. I think we understand each other better now, even though we might not have seen each other. Regarding the misleading media of Russia and protecting the youth about it and keeping the Ukrainian narrative, well, media itself is a really complex topic overall. And this question can be divided into two parts, basically. The first one is about the narrative of the Ukrainian resistance. Well, firstly, it's the main sources of the Ukrainian media, and it's the government. And there are no better resources as of the narratives of what Ukraine is going through rather than the government. Also, there are independent media resources operating in Ukraine, same as BBC, CNBS, CNN, and everything. And any major media that is present is Ukraine is reporting on the situation, even though the media coverage compared to the beginning of the war and then to right now is drastically different. There was a big spike at the anniversary of war, if you can call it anniversary, but rather than that, overall media has exhausted itself with the topic of Ukraine, and it's important to keep the society well informed about of what's happening. And there's no other ways, unfortunately, to do it rather than either successful news or tragic news. So this is one of the key points that I have to say. And then the other answer to the question is how to face the misleading Russian propaganda from youth. Basically, there's few ways of doing it. First one is education. Education is always the key. As long as the youth is well educated, they have critical thinking, they know if they read an article somewhere and they can fact check it, they can send it to their friends, discuss it, they can send it to someone they trust. This can lead to development of critical thinking and then understanding if the news are real or not. Also, one of the tactics of not getting misled by media is to choose sources that report differently, but that are trusted in terms of your friends, family, in terms of people that you follow on social media. Maybe you've heard from the media from someone. The recommended amount is 3 to 5 sources, and just do your research from that. And there has to be at least one of the sources that would be different, even regarding the same topic, so you would understand the difference in the opinion and the view and the information that is displayed for you and by someone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Sislav. Olha, Alina, would either of you like to respond as well?
Thank you. I would also like to express my solidarity with Karam. Thank you so much for your message. I totally agree with what Rostislav has said. And, I think that we very often right now hear the narrative that time plays in favor of, not in favor of Ukraine, that the world would experience fatigue from Ukraine in this long-term period. But I think that all we can do is make the time play not in favor of Russia. So everyone right now, I think, is in his place. The youth the member of the youth is like an ambassador of Ukraine. So all we can do is spread the information among our friends, among all the friends abroad, and just do what we can do to counter the propaganda and make the world know the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Olha? Olha is having temporary technical difficulties and is just rejoining us in the room now. So Olha, if you're able to contribute now, thank you.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I just had trouble with my microphone. So I don't know, like the most part about fatigue because it's like the most popular one that is spoke about when the discussion gets about war. And I want to tell everyone that actually, yes, we do get tired, and we do get tired really easy. And when there's a war conflict or just any conflict, it makes us exhausted very soon. And actually, it does not even depend on how much strength do we have on the start, but it depends on the spirit of people. If we don't have an accurate purpose and a feeling that it is like important to us, then we will get tired just in 1 second. But what I want to say is that Ukrainians actually see when like other people get tired, and the thought that comes to the mind is like, oh well, this person is tired, so I have to help him or her, so we will be safe together. And this is just like maybe you know a fact that in Sparta you had to have your shield always prepared so you can defend the other person. And here works the same principle. So we obviously we are tired and all this stuff, but we are prepared to help others, because when we help others, we get energy. And this is the thing about volunteering. We go and support other people, and this way, this like energy cycle, it works all the time, and this keeps us energized and active. So, for example, for me, volunteering works and my hobby works. So I just do the stuff I love and support people around, and this makes me more energized. And then I get the feeling that I know what I'm defending and what I am fighting for. So this works for me, and I know that this works for many people. And this is just one way to fight the fatigue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olha. Alina, Olha, Rosislav, and also Dennis, who joined us earlier, you have shared so much, and you have given and brought forward your experiences, your stories, and spoken from your hearts, from your lived experience of the war, and from all you're doing. I would like to just ask one last question in today's event to you. What do you need? What do you want to see from youth like yourselves in the European Union today? Youth who do have one significant difference, if not others, in that they're not living through the war, but we are your neighbors, and we are united in a common Europe in the midst of the largest war in Europe since the Second World War. What would you like to see? What would be your message, if you were to share one, to students and youth across the European Union today, and if you wish, students and youth around the world?
Maybe I can start. So the main points that I want you to keep in mind that you make a difference. Like youth is not, as I said earlier, that powerful as the adults are, but still everyone makes difference. And I want you all to remember that even you just support in your mind, that you find resources that are verified. Do not believe everything that other people say, check resources and help people even emotionally. That's always help, and it counts. You make a difference, and you should remember that. And also Ukrainians learn that very much, and I want you to remember this. And also that you should better know real good what you are fighting for before getting into any conflict, because when you don't know what is your award from this competition, let's call it that way, you will never make it and you will never win it. So two things: remember that you have power and make difference, and always have the accurate purpose in your head. So this is like the most important things that I wanted to tell.
Thank you so much, Olha. Alina.
Yes, I will be short. What I would say is that your actions today define your tomorrow. So just imagine yourself the world you want to see in the future and act accordingly today. Just briefly at that.
Thank you, Alina. Rostislav.
Thank you, Kai. What I would say is get involved, and get involved in the topic stream and interest of what you have and what you want to do, then research about it. Are there any options? Are there any possibilities how to do it, when to do it, and then to support or to do? What I would love to see is that from a person to go from a past, from getting involved to researching to supporting, and then ending up somewhere in the occupied region in Ukraine volunteering and even maybe helping to carry bricks from one side to another for a day. And this experience would be more meaningful for them than any other experience with volunteering that they had before. So again, get involved, research, and continue support.
Thank you so much, Rosislav. You have been listening and with us for the first of a series of global webinars on Ukraine and global youth, peace, and security, the impacts of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Voices of Ukrainian Youth. I would like to thank again Alina Kurska, International Affairs Director at the Global Empowerment Mission, GEM, and Ukrainian Youth Delegate to the United Nations, as well as member of the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry's Youth Council. Denis Gamza, Youth Affairs Council under the President of Ukraine and member of the Youth Council of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Olha Melnik with the Ukraine Leadership Academy, and Rostislav Kubik with Ukraine Leadership Academy and a BBC local producer. We've had the opportunity to hear from 4 of the millions of youth across Ukraine who are living under the impact of the ongoing invasion and war, but more than that, who are standing up, actively engaging with incredible resilience, incredible courage and dedication to help their society and their country survive and to lay the foundations for building the future of Ukraine beyond the war. We would also like to remind of the millions upon millions of children and youth in Mali, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in countries around the world who continue to live with the failed and destructive, the bankrupt policies of leadership, usually older men, who are investing billions of the world's resources in the fanatic extremism and global terrorism of war. We will also have, coming shortly, the People to People mission being led by the Ukraine Leadership Academy, supported by the Prague Civil Society Center, where youth from Ukraine will be traveling to Warsaw, Brussels, Bonn, Köln, Strasbourg, Vienna, and Cluj-Napoca Colășvar in Romania. We are all of us living now through the largest war in Europe, and as Alina so powerfully said, our actions today will shape our future tomorrow. We have skyrocketing military budgets. We have hundreds of thousands of Russian young men being drafted and sent into war. And while this is a war that the Russian state and nation are involved in, we must also remember that Russia is a country which has been living under more than 20 years of virtual dictatorship and authoritarian rule by the Putin regime, where those who have spoken up, be they youth, journalists, or other activists, have often been assassinated, fallen from buildings, or imprisoned. And yet there have still been more than 38,000 demonstrations in Russia against the war, primarily led by youth and by feminists there. And there's ongoing opposition and resistance to the brutal and authoritarian regime in Belarus by youth, by students, by civil society, struggling for democracy and a future there. The impacts of this continuing war devastatingly affect the people of Ukraine and impact all of us. And it is imperative upon all of us to unite and to work together to end the war and to remain involved in the long-term effort of healing, recovery, and supporting the people of Ukraine in rebuilding after the war. I would like to thank the extraordinary organizations of the Ukraine Leadership Academy, Prolitium Civitas, Un Ponto Per, and the Romanian Peace Institute for the organization of this event. I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us from around the world. If you are involved in organizations which are working on or in Ukraine or which would like to become active, I would also share with you that there is a monthly meeting of a global collective or group called All for Peace, which helps to create a space for people to come together to hear and listen to the latest updated information on what is happening in Ukraine, to hear from Ukrainian organizations as well as from global organizations working to support and to engage for peace in Ukraine. Also, there will this June in Vienna be an international summit for peace in Ukraine. It will be a challenging issue, bringing together from across the divided parties of the conflict and working to engage citizens, governments, and people of Europe and around the world to work for an end to the war in Ukraine. Дякую. Thank you to all.
Thank you.
Thank